Welcome to MMAfighting.com's preview of Strikeforce Fedor versus Silva. I'm Ariel Helwani alongside our special guest today, the babyface assassin, Josh Barnett, one of the participants of the Strikeforce Heavyweight Grand Prix. And just moments ago, inside the Izod Center here in East Rutherford, New Jersey, the weigh-ins just completed. Everyone's official. Everyone's ready to go for Saturday night. Josh, you are competing in April. We're going to get your thoughts on the fights tomorrow night, starting, of course, with the main event, Fedor Emelianenko versus Antonio Bigfoot Silva. So many questions about this fight. I think the first one is, everyone wants to know how Fedor is going to respond and rebound from his official first loss of his career. We know he lost many moons ago, but this was the first time. I know you know him pretty well. Have you had a chance to talk to him and see what kind of mindset he's in?
You know what, he seems good to go. He seems to be just the guy that I've always known. And I don't really think he views that loss. And I don't think we can really take that loss and count it, or not say count it, but its relevance towards this fight is pretty much null. Two completely different styles of fighters. I would say there's almost next to no chance that Bigfoot will submit Fedor, barring some sort of smash away and manage to catch a choke on a rollover kind of thing. Other than that, I just don't see it happening. However, two greatly different style of fighters in Bigfoot and Verdum, and with this. The biggest thing is everyone knows that Bigfoot, like with all his fights, is going to use his size, essentially. I mean, honestly, that is his greatest asset. That is the biggest thing that's had him win, I would say, most all of his fights. He is a size fighter. He is skilled, but his techniques, his style is based on size. And with that, I think Fedor has to avoid getting caught up in any prolonged wrestling or any situations where he's underneath him, and use a lot of angles and good footwork. The other thing is Bigfoot has a tendency to punch with his head up, not keep his chin down. He does have some decent boxing, but Fedor cuts those angles, and when those punches come through, I just think it's going to send Silva to the mat, and that's going to be the end of it.
Antonio Bigfoot Silva weighed in 34 pounds heavier than Fedor today. If you're in his camp, how does he use his size to his advantage? What can he do in order to use that as one of the chips in his favor?
Well, he's 34 pounds today. Tomorrow, he's probably 44 pounds heavier, at least. Basically, he's got to cut the ring off. He has to stay within the line of fire, but he's got so much reach. Although Fedor does have pretty long arms and good reach for a man of his stature. Silva needs to use that jab. He needs to use the reach advantage that he does have. And then when it's time to close the distance, or when Fedor attempts to close the distance, that's when he has to react and time that momentum coming forward. In boxing, it's not so much of an issue, because if you end up running into each other, or you clinch a little bit, they break you up, you start over again. But in MMA, now you're in a grappling situation, and that's one of the major differences about boxing distance and timing and MMA distance and timing. And if you even want to use the boxing analogy further, in boxing, the guys throw combos and eventually run into each other a high percentage of the time. They try to get their punches off, boom, they touch, they separate them. Without that separation, in an MMA fight, it changes the dynamic, which is why Fedor can't really rely to throw too many punches in a row, and instead needs to angle off 1, 2, maybe 3 punches, and then turn the corner or circle on him. Bigfoot, like I said, get that reach going, draw him in, then create the clinch, or cut off the ring and pressure forward, stay on top of him. I could also see a lot of Bigfoot pressing Fedor into the cage.
Other than size, do you see Bigfoot having any kind of advantage over Fedor?
No, I don't.
So you don't see him pulling off an upset in any kind of way?
No, I can see him pulling off an upset. I think he's a skilled fighter.
How could he pull off an upset?
Through either riding him out for the entire distance of the match, a standing knockout, or some ground and pound. I think more ground and pound or a decision would be the most likely possibility with that. But Fedor is pretty hard to keep on his back. He's got great hips. He's very quick.
Now let's go back to reality. How do you see Fedor actually winning the fight?
Well, I do, by cutting an angle and hitting him with a nice casting punch right in the temple, probably.
Does Bigfoot get out of the first round?
No.
Think about it.
No, I'm gonna say Fedor in the first round. I just think that the way that he fights and with his style, that's the likely option. But he could survive it.
By the way, do you still consider Fedor the #1 heavyweight in the world?
Well, I do. I think he's the best guy out there still. However, I think that if you go by a rankings basis, he does have the loss. I think Alistair's number one.
You're very interested in that fight, obviously, Fedor versus Bigfoot. It's a big fight for the heavyweight division, but you're probably even more interested in Andrei Arlovski versus Sergey Kharitonov, because you're facing, if you get by your next opponent, Brett Rogers, you'll face the winner of that fight. A lot of questions about that fight, and let's start with Andrei Arlovski. He's lost 3 fights in a row. He needs this win to not only advance in the tournament, but really get his career back on track. What have you seen, this past week from him? I think he's been in a very good place. I notice he has a wedding ring on. He seems to be in a very good place mentally, and that's always been a question about him. What's your take on him?
Well, I can't really speak much for his mental state, and I don't know him too personally, and I'm not too familiar with his personal life or and any effects that it may have had on his previous fights or even this current one. I do know that as a fighter, Arlovski is a pretty well-rounded guy, but he tends to stick, especially with his boxing and kickboxing. Although really in that order, he boxes, then he kickboxes, and then if necessary, maybe he goes into sambo mode. Same with Kharitonov, though.
Yeah.
It's the same guy, essentially fighting the same way. Although Kharitonov will use more of his sambo techniques than Arlovski will, but. Even though each one is more of a boxing-based fighter, their styles of boxing are radically different. Arlovski likes to use more angles. He likes to come hard inside fast and get right out and fight with a more of American type of boxing stance and aptitude. Whereas Kharitonov is very European, heavy-handed, takes a lot of shots and gives them back, digs the body quite a bit, and basically gets right in your face and just dares you to punch him and have him punch you back.
Do you see any guy flipping the script and taking this fight to the ground?
I think Kharitonov is more likely to put this fight to the floor, more likely than anyone, but I don't think it's going to hit the floor. Anything's possible, but that's not what I see happening with this fight. I think it's going to be a big slugfest, and Arlovski has a tendency to be great as a front runner, but to fold or to have a hard time dealing with pressure. That's what I want to see, and maybe the instances that have been in his training or maybe in his personal life that have affected that, maybe he's gotten through it. He definitely seems confident. He looks ready to fight. I expect a great match out of the two of them.
Who wins and how?
Kharitonov by TKO, I think.
First round?
First or second.
Wow.
They're just two powerful guys that once their offense gets going, it's just it's hard to see how anyone's going to continue to stay on their feet. And once any sort of momentum or head of steam has been gathered by either, it's going to go that way all the way to the finish.
There's a very important reserve Grand Prix bout on this card. Shane Del Rosario going up against LeVar Big Johnson. It's important for the Grand Prix. It's also important for both of their careers. This is the first chance that these guys are getting to actually showcase their skills on a major Showtime card. Del Rosario undefeated, great striker. LeVar Johnson has overcome so much in his life, and now he's turned things around for himself, and he's fighting on this card. Who do you like in that fight?
I got to say probably Del Rosario in terms of having the more technical kickboxing, and he's got quite a bit of speed, and being a southpaw could throw some angles at Johnson to give him a hard time in terms of trying to get his offense off. Johnson's a good striker too, but it's a different style, more of a brawling, power-based sort of style of stand-up fighting. But it's worked great for him. He's a heavy hitter. He's got a long reach and is able to come over the top pretty easily. Johnson's a big guy. He doesn't necessarily have a size advantage in that he weighed in less than Del Rosario, but he's bigger framed, bigger boned. I've trained with Del Rosario before. He's got great angles, good head movement, but he's a more dynamic kicker. I think that's going to be the difference in this fight. All
right, we have to go. So let me just get, in a word, your two predictions on the last two fights. John Vellante versus Chad Griggs. Who do you like?
I'm going to go with Griggs. He takes a beating, he takes a licking, keeps on ticking. He's surprised me twice now before. I didn't expect him to beat Lashley, although I knew it was going to be a very tough fight for Bobby and for Chad, and I didn't expect him to beat John Marsh, first time I ever heard of him. So he's continued to impress.
And Overeem versus Sefo?
Overeem by way of leg lock.
Well, I like it. All right, for Josh Barnett, I'm Ariel Helwani. Don't forget, it all kicks off Saturday night live on Showtime beginning at 10 p.m. You could also catch the undercard bouts on HGNet. It is the first round of the Strikeforce Heavyweight Grand Prix, and it takes place right here inside the Izod Center.
And you should probably get some ointment for whatever that itch is or that condition.
All right.
Maybe it's Tourette's.
All right. Thank you very much, Josh. We'll see you tomorrow night right here on MMAfighting.com.